was another night where the Philadelphia Eagles had a knockdown, drag-out battle with their opponent from the NFC North, and it was a defensive showdown in which the Philadelphia Eagles came out on top with a final score of 16-9. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The Eagles held on, and in no small part, this game was due to the Philadelphia Eagles defense showing up once again, because this team is really just firing on all cylinders on the defensive side of the football, even when the offensive side of the football really seems to be struggling right now. So we can take a look, obviously, at the particulars of this game. But one thing I do want to point out is that Jared Goff was 14 for 37 on the course of the day. He had 255 passing yards. Jared Goff was sacked twice, and he had an interception. And while, yes, Jared Goff did have a touchdown, he did not feel comfortable over the course of the game at all. Jared Goff was really struggling. There were a lot of quarterback hits. There were 7 quarterback hits over the course of this game. And then you had more than a handful of passes that were broken up at the line of scrimmage. In particular, Jordan Davis broke up 3 passes at the line of scrimmage, including one that resulted in an interception by Cooper DeJean. And then Jalen Carter also had his fair share of pass breakups at the line of scrimmage, breaking up 2 of them. Now, 255 passing yards is not great, and I think one of the reasons for that is a perennial criticism that I have of the Philadelphia Eagles on defense, and that is that they tend to try to hit guys as opposed to wrap them up and bring them down. But that's something that has been a perennial criticism, and honestly, given the way that the Philadelphia Eagles defense played over the course of this game, it was really a minor criticism. But again, you look at folks like Zach Baun, who had 7 combined tackles, including 1 for a loss. You had the 2 pass breakups by Jalen Carter. You had Jalen Phillips getting his first sack as an Eagle. You had Nakobe Dean getting the other sack. You had Adoree Jackson showing up, having a critical pass breakup late in the game. Cooper DeJean with his interception, and also had a couple of pass breakups of his own. We had Quinyon Mitchell getting into the action there. The Philadelphia Eagles defense really showed up and was able to really rattle Jared Goff, giving him one of his worst performances of the season so far, and was able to control the line of scrimmage pretty well as well, because the Eagles were able to hold the Lions to 74 rushing yards on the day. Most of those coming off of the legs of Jahmyr Gibbs, who had 39 yards on 12 carries. David Montgomery was in the mix as well there, 6 carries for 27 yards. So the Eagles were really able to dominate at the line of scrimmage, and that has an impact because that makes it very difficult for opposing offenses to really get in there and try to adjust and game plan for a team that's really not going to allow you to get anything. And that was something that the Eagles defense was able to do successfully. I also want to give a huge props to the Eagles special teams. The Eagles and the Lions both were dealing with a lot of wind, and the Eagles special teams unit really did a good job. Jake Elliott had 3 field goals and 1 extra point on the day. Braden Mann had to punt the ball 7 times and was able to grab 289 yards off of those punts. The weather also influenced the Lions' decisions in multiple occasions, because the Lions were able to score a touchdown, and probably the worst drive of the Eagles defense was that touchdown drive, where the Lions on 3 plays went 74 yards in 53 seconds and was able to get that 6 points, which actually evened the game up shortly before halftime. But on that extra point, Jake Bates actually wound up missing the extra point, and I think that rattled the Lions a little bit. So what wound up happening was the Lions were going for it quite a bit on fourth down, even when it was fourth down and long. Situations where you probably wouldn't expect because winds at kickoff were about 15 miles an hour. And they were showing some of the warm up highlights for the Eagles and the Lions in terms of kicking field goals, and the wind was taking them bad. So the fact that the Eagles and the Lions were facing the same conditions, the Lions made the decision more so to go for it in those late down situations. The Lions were held to just 3 for 13 on third down conversions, and when they opted to go for it on fourth down, the Lions were 0 for 5. The Eagles also continued their dominance in the red zone. The Lions got into a red zone or a goal to go situation once over the course of the game, and the Lions were unsuccessful. So the defense was really playing lights out. They were exceptional. And that goes into making sure that the defense is able to cover for continued struggles on the offensive side of the football. The offense, I don't know what is going on with the offensive side of the football, but it really needs to get sorted out because we are more than halfway through the season. The Eagles are not playing any easier opponents. The Eagles have the Cowboys next week, and then they're going to face the Chicago Bears, who are currently seated atop the NFC North. And then you've got folks like the Commanders, you've got the Bills, you've got the Commanders again to close the season out. The Eagles are going to be facing some tough games over the course of the next few weeks, and I would suspect that the Eagles are going to be challenged by a lot of those teams. Nothing is for certain, but the Eagles' offense can't keep getting away with scoring 13, 10, 16 points and coming away with the victory. The Philadelphia Eagles simply have to figure out what's going on offensively. Jalen Hurts was 14 for 28 for 135 yards. He was sacked once. The only Eagles touchdown on the day came off of a brotherly shove. The Eagles actually did do a decent enough job in the run game. Nobody had a specific 100-plus yard rushing day. However, the Eagles did put up 148 rushing yards on the Detroit Lions. Saquon Barkley had 83 yards on 26 carries. Meanwhile, Tank Bigsby had 34 yards on 4 carries. So Tank Bigsby was really, really contributing in this game, and that was huge. In the passing game, though, a lot of Jalen Hurts' throws definitely were due to pressure, which was a little bit present, but they were also just miscues. They were miscommunications. They were situations where he was throwing and just not connecting with the receiver. There were situations where he was throwing the ball and it was in the receiver's hands more often than not, but the receiver just couldn't haul it in. And those obviously aren't on Jalen, but all of this factors into a passing game that's really struggling. And when opposing defenses are generally able to shut down the run game, as they have been doing over the course of this season, it makes it really, really easy to stop the pass. I'm not really thrilled right now with what's going on the offense, and there's a lot of discussion about Kevin Patullo not being the right guy. As I'm taking a look at Kevin Patullo and I'm looking at the offensive production on this game, and really over the course of the last several weeks, Kevin Patullo has not impressed. And in terms of play calling, in terms of coaching his guys, in terms of trying to weed out the mistakes. Yes, there are going to be mistakes, and yes, players are going to have to own up to them and going to have to try to grow from them. But at this point, it's not just the play calling, it's the fact that the Eagles keep seeming to do the same thing over and over and over again offensively, and there doesn't seem to be any new ideas. And there's always something that's going to be some kind of a head scratcher or some kind of something going on. For this game, that was very late in the game. There was a decision that made a lot of eyebrows go up, and that was 4th and inches, with the Philadelphia Eagles having the ball deep in their own territory, right around the 30-yard line. The Eagles tried for a brotherly shove, and the brotherly shove was stopped, and that gave the Lions the ball deep in Eagles territory. And while the Lions were only able to get a field goal out of the situation, the fact that the Lions were in that position at all definitely sounded all of the alarm bells. And while I am not necessarily as averse to this particular decision as I was to the decision that the Eagles dialed up last week, when the Eagles were in 4th and 6 and decided to try to go for it instead of punt the ball, this was definitely a weirder decision. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles did benefit from a key call that occurred very late in the game, 3rd down and 8, 1:51 to go. If the Eagles get a first down, game's over at this point, but it's 3rd and 8. Jalen Hurts throws the ball, and while it's incomplete, the Lions are flagged for pass interference. Zach Berman of The Athletic, who is the pool reporter for the Eagles press corps, so to speak, and friend of the show, caught up with Alex Kemp following the game to talk about that particular play. Alex Kemp explained that the official who threw the flag observed the receiver's arm getting grabbed and restricting him from going up to make the catch. So since the ball was in the air and the receiver was restricted, that was considered to be pass interference. But ultimately, as we take a look at this game, we can't lose sight of the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles are 8-2. And they are in the driver's seat in the NFC East. So while we can levy all kinds of criticism against this team, and rightfully so, especially if we're talking about the offense, the Philadelphia Eagles offensively are doing the bare minimum to keep this team on the winning side of games. While yes, the offense needs to figure it out, and yes, the offense needs to start connecting with their receivers and start figuring out how to dominate again like Eagles fans are expecting them to do. The Philadelphia Eagles hold the number 1 seed in the NFC right now thanks to a tiebreaker, the head-to-head against the LA Rams, which the Eagles won earlier in the season. And they are very much in the driver's seat in the NFC East, as you're hard-pressed to find a team right now that has a winning record in the NFC East that's not coming out of Philadelphia. So the Eagles get ready this week to take on the Dallas Cowboys in their next matchup. And the Philadelphia Eagles have a number of tough games coming up, but we'll see how they fare. For now, this team comes away with a key victory and leaves fans with probably not the best feeling, knowing what this team has to work with and knowing what this team has to continue to improve upon. But at least when you look at the defensive side of the football, there's a lot to celebrate. And fans can have at least a little bit of that good feeling coming off of this game. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your thoughts about this game? What stood out to you? What concerns do you have? What positives do you have about this game? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage, and if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.